Okay, so continuing on, the third paragraph introduces the gold standard tool, points out that it has some problems in primary care setting, and then they continue to develop that idea and show how those problems are evidence that support the need for their study, that we need a shorter and simpler tool to use in primary care. So you can see that here. They bring up the Beck Depression Inventory, which is the current gold standard tool, talk about the problems with it, and now we're leading logically into our study, which is, we need to find a better tool, and maybe the PHQ-9 will serve as that better tool. So moving on, the last paragraph establishes the advantages of the PHQ-9 tool, and then lists the specific aims of this study, which includes, of course, the hypotheses that the authors sought to test out. So you see, we've brought up the background, we've brought up how many people have heart failure, that depression and heart failure often go hand in hand, that despite the fact that depression is common in heart failure patients, and despite the pretty serious consequences of heart failure of depression in heart failure patients, this often goes undiagnosed and untreated. And we have a tool for identifying depression, but it's kind of cumbersome, it's kind of long, and we need a better one to address that issue of, physicians feeling like they're not comfortable asking these kinds of questions, that they don't have time to ask them, et cetera, et cetera. So we've very logically built up our argument here. Here's the problem at hand. Here's why it's important. Here's what we might be able to do about it. And this last paragraph brings that all home with establishing the advantages of the tool that they're studying and gives us the hypotheses that they set out to test. So here we have in the pink a little description of the PHQ-9, that it's been validated in a variety of different populations, that it's just 9 questions, but it hasn't been validated in patients with heart failure, so of course that's what they're going to do. And then here we have our hypotheses. And here is the actual purpose statement. The purpose of the study was blah, 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 etc., etc. So a very strong introduction. Does everything that an introduction should do. Does it concisely and clearly, and we're in no doubt after reading this about exactly what this paper is going to do and what it's going to cover. So it's a nice example. Okay, so moving on from introductions and purpose statements to the body of the paper and how to build a strong paragraph and section. And if you can learn how to build a strong paragraph, you've really learned almost everything you need to know about writing a good paper, because those are the building blocks of a good paper. This is a quote from a great science writer, Victoria McMillan. She's a biologist, and she wrote a book called Writing Papers in the Biological Sciences. And she says about paragraphs that they are not just chunks of text. At their best, they are logically constructed passages organized around a central idea, often expressed in a topic sentence. A writer constructs, orders, and connects paragraphs as a means of guiding the reader from one topic to the next along a logical train of thought. Such a good quote and such a good explanation of what a paragraph is. A lot of us are taught erroneously when we are in elementary school or high school, or even sometimes in composition courses in undergrad, that a paragraph should just be 3 to 5 sentences long. And that basically you should just kind of break for a new paragraph every 3 to 5 sentences. And that is such terrible advice, because that's not what a paragraph is. As McMillan says, it is a unit that should work together cohesively. It should begin with a topic sentence, and then everything in that paragraph should relate to that topic sentence, so that we have here a piece of a larger puzzle. It's not just a random collection of sentences. So let's talk about what makes a strong paragraph. A strong paragraph should begin and end with important information and ideas. So think of it like bookends. Important stuff here, important stuff here. It should include a topic sentence to let readers know the main idea, and that is usually going to come at the beginning of a paragraph. So you'll open with your topic sentence. So it's on a kind of micro level, kind of like what a purpose statement is for the whole paper. Now, every paragraph or connected series of paragraphs needs a topic sentence. Every paragraph. And what do I mean when I say connected series of paragraphs? Well, sometimes it may take you 2 or 3 paragraphs to develop one main idea. So when this is the case, when it's going to take you 2 or 3 paragraphs to develop one main idea, you don't need another topic sentence for each of those necessarily. So I guess maybe a better way to say it is that every main idea needs a topic sentence. So every time you're moving on to a new main idea, you need a topic sentence to introduce it. So again, a topic sentence is usually going to come at the beginning of a paragraph or a connected series of paragraphs, and it should succinctly state the main idea of that paragraph or paragraphs. The topic sentence shouldn't promise anything that the paragraph will not deliver. So, and that's of course true with the purpose statement of the whole paper as well, as we discussed earlier. So if you say there are 2 major principles in evaluating a burn wound, then you have to make sure that the paragraph actually does discuss 2 principles, not 1, not 3, it's whatever the topic sentence promises. A strong paragraph is also coherent and unified. So when we talk about coherence, what we mean is that the paragraph makes sense as a whole. Every sentence in it is going to relate to the topic sentence and to all the other sentences in the paragraph. So you guys probably remember watching Sesame Street as a kid. I know I did. And there was this little frequent game that they would play. One of these things is not like the other. And so, you'd have like a room full of vegetables, and then there would be like a banana in the middle, right? And that would be the thing that wasn't like the others. And you should play that game with your paragraphs as well. So is there a sentence in there that doesn't relate to the topic sentence, that doesn't relate to the sentences around it? If so, it's got to go. It's got to either get cut completely, or you got to find another place to put it where it is relevant. And that's coherence. And unified means that all the sentences are working together to form a complete picture. So it's logical. They're all kind of working together to build toward that main idea and develop that main idea. I like analogies. So you can think of a dartboard, and you can think of your topic sentence as the part in the middle, that little target that you're aiming for. And just as everything in your whole manuscript should fly like an arrow toward the bullseye of your purpose statement, every sentence in your paragraph or your series of connected paragraphs should fly like an arrow to the bullseye of your topic sentence. So every sentence in your paragraph is going to develop your main idea, to illustrate your main idea, or to support your main idea. So it has to relate, otherwise it does not belong in that paragraph. And we've all read, papers either written by ourselves or written by peers where there's examples of that. You're reading along and you see, what is that sentence doing there? That has nothing to do with what you were just talking about. And it's frustrating when it happens because it's confusing and it interrupts the flow. Another good analogy for this is a jigsaw puzzle. If I were making a jigsaw puzzle and I wanted to show it to you, I wouldn't show you each individual piece at a time. I wouldn't say, hey, look at this green blob and then look at this pink blob. No, I would wait until I'd put the whole thing together, and then I would show you the completed picture, a basket of kittens or the Eiffel Tower or whatever it is. So the sentences in a coherent and unified paragraph are all going to come together to form a complete picture of the main idea that you're seeking to express in that paragraph, just like the way that puzzle pieces come together to make a picture. And let's look at a couple of examples of unified coherent paragraphs. This is from an article called Proofreading, the Skill We've Neglected to Teach. Short-term memory presents my inexperienced writers with another proofreading problem. Because the short-term memory can only deal with 7 ± 2 items at a time, inexperienced writers often create sentences that are mixtures of sentence patterns, making their ideas seem jumbled. The latter part of the sentence often fails to mesh with the first part. For instance, subjects and verbs may not agree if more than 7 words separate them in a sentence. Because inexperienced writers are often slow readers, they frequently fail to notice their errors. The short-term memory cannot sustain words from the beginning of a sentence through to the end of that sentence. So note the color coding there. The pink is the topic sentence, and that's the first sentence in the paragraph, which is that short-term memory presents inexperienced writers with a proofreading problem. And every other sentence in that paragraph relates back to that and develops that. Also notice where the author has followed the show don't tell rule by giving an example to illustrate the point that she's making, and that's in the green. That's a good piece of advice. Show, don't tell. Examples are more powerful than explanations any day of the week. So I can explain something to you beautifully, but wouldn't you rather me tell you a story that actually shows you how that works rather than just explaining it to you? And so it's a good piece of advice to remember to show and not just tell. Let's look at another good paragraph here. In spite of the problems that inexperienced writers may have with simply reading their written work, most of them can learn to proofread effectively. But proofreading must be taught. It is not innate. Deficiencies in proofreading skills are usually due to a lack of instruction rather than carelessness, laziness, lack of motivation, dishonesty, or even mediocre verbal skills. In other words, general verbal ability is a prerequisite for proofreading, but there are no specific skills that guarantee proofreading ability. Thus, my teaching of spelling or mechanics does not improve proofreading. Although writers may make fewer errors as a result of that instruction, their ability to locate errors does not improve. The only way to improve proofreading is to teach proofreading. Furthermore, I find it helpful to teach student writers more than just the strategies for proofreading. So again, we have a topic sentence in pink, and we have a paragraph where every sentence in there relates back to that topic sentence. So those paragraphs illustrate the elements of unity and coherence that we talked about. It focuses on one main idea only, and that's an important thing to remember, that not to try to do too much in a paragraph. Really, one main idea per paragraph is a good rule of thumb, because otherwise you're going to bite off more than you can chew, and it'll end up making the paragraph seem jumbled and unfocused. Coherence, again, the parts are clearly related, all the sentences relate to each other, and then back to the topic sentence. And then also the element of development, meaning that your main idea is supported by specific details that anchor it and develop it and add texture. All right. A strong paragraph relates to the paragraphs around it. So just as the sentences in a paragraph relate to the sentences around it, the paragraph itself should relate to the paragraphs around it. Each paragraph is a step in the process of creating a logical argument. And I think we've probably all read papers before where there are these sudden kind of baffling leaps from one topic to another, where somebody will be going on about one thing and then suddenly the next paragraph is just from Mars and you can't figure out how they got from point A to point B. You want to avoid that. You want to make sure that your organization is logical and purposeful. Part of the way to do that is to use transition words and transition phrases and sometimes transition sentences. Transitions tell readers how sentences and paragraphs relate to each other. They show the connections between ideas. They highlight those connections. And they help guide readers logically through the text, idea to idea, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. And here are some examples of transition words and phrases. There's many, many others. This is just a short list. So, words like then and next and therefore and however, phrases like in contrast, for example, etc. All those are examples of transitions. So some transitions show a cause and effect relationship. So words like therefore and as a result, we know that we're looking at cause and effect there. If I see the word therefore, I know that I'm going to get a cause and effect. This happens, so then this happens. Same with as a result. Some transitions show relationships between ideas. So a word like however, if I see however, I know I'm going to get something that is in contrast to what has just been said. Some transitions show a time sequence, a chronology. So when we see words like then, next, after, first, finally, we know that's a chronological sequence being expressed. But whatever the purpose, they all lead us more smoothly and logically from idea to idea, and they're very useful in that respect. You can use transitions within paragraphs to show how sentences relate to each other, like in the following example. And I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I'll let you read it to yourself. But you can see the transitions in red there. And that's within a paragraph to smooth it out and make the flow more logical. So just take a moment to look at that on your own.